Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega, with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sega Talk podcast, where we take one Sega game and one or a console and dedicate a whole episode talking about the history, development, and our opinion on the history of that game or console. I'm your host George, and with me is the Sega Nomad himself, Barry.
Hey, yeah, I haven't gone by Sega Nomad in a while. I kind of phased that out. I should bring it back. But
Right.
I'm actually thinking of maybe Barry the Bimbo. What do you think about that?
You
saw this?
hear those? Yeah, I saw your tweet
On social media. Yeah, I got my Bimbo Donas Azucaradas, right?
Yeah, people were saying online, they're like, you know that doesn't mean the same thing in Spanish, and I'm like, no, duh.
I know, right?
Like, come on, guys.
And then someone's like,
You're not...
it's like, I know, I'm just making a joke. I know bimbos, and it's bimbo,
Yeah.
whatever. But like,
Bimbo.
it's the fact that it's Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie promotional items. It's the only one I've ever seen. Like, this movie, as well as it's performing, the merchandising and marketing is kind of garbage. I don't know.
So, are you going to do a fastest food alive with Bimbo?
With Bimbo, like, what would I talk about? I'm like, in 1972, John Bimbo had a plan.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
And
the
then-
history of the word.
And then the other
So
thing I was just
people
going
know
to do real quick, since this is video, I got the pop-up book finally, too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
For the... Yeah.
So-
For the arcade one that ROM... What's the company called again?
Read-only memory, yeah. So it's the Sega Arcade pop-up history. And honestly, it's really sweet. But, yeah, the reason I brought these out, beside the fact that I just got them and I'm wearing my Team Sonic Racing shirt, is there's kind of a theme here, right? Do you see what I'm kind of leading into with
I
you?
see.
What's the connection, all of these? Sonic, stuff like Outrun, and Team Sonic Racing. What's kind of the connection there with today's show?
Because we're going to be talking about Sega Superstars Tennis,
Yes.
which is a tennis crossover video game developed by Sumo Digital and was released on March 2008 on PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, Nintendo DS, and there was a Mac OS X version in 2013, but not a PC version, which is weird. The game featured 16 playable characters, 10 courts featuring different Sega franchises, which I guess we'll talk about later. But like we start every episode, what is your history with Sega Superstar Tennis? What is your opinion that it's now been 12 years since we had this game?
Wow.
And what version of the game did you play most, since there's so many versions?
So this game, as you said, it came out in what was it, 2008, right?
Yeah.
So this is a strange one because it does predate Sega Bits. So I was not super into modern Sega gaming at that time, but I do believe I shortly thereafter got a Xbox 360. So probably a year later, I picked up the 360 version of this. And played it a little bit. I mean, at the time, I thought the game was a little janky. I won't lie.
Oh, yeah. It was, for sure.
But I absolutely loved seeing all of these Sega characters together, and being a big Dreamcast fan, I did see the connection between Virtua Tennis. So, my opinion on it now being 12 years old, like, wow, we've come so far.
Yeah, I know.
It's insane.
Yeah. Right?
It's a really important game because it did kick off what we now have as the All-Stars Racing series. And it's fascinating to think that a tennis game has now led us to this windy road to Team Sonic Racing, or as I'm wearing, Sonic Racing. So this is the shirt, I think you got one too, for the mobile
Yes, I
port.
did.
So it's such a weird history this franchise has had and Sumo has had with Sega. So I'm really looking forward to talking about it. And it's a weird game for us to... Why'd you pick this?
I picked this game because, I don't know, I was just thinking the other day because it was the All-Stars Racing 10th anniversary, and I was like, we haven't done one of these crossover games, and I was actually really into this game when it came out, so that's why I was like, oh, maybe I'll just talk about the tennis one. Nobody talks about it.
I like that. I like it.
Yeah. Well, my history with the game was basically I was already starting to get more intensely into writing about Sega. So when this game came out, I kind of was really excited because I feel like in the West we never got a game that was hyped. Like there was a game before this, which we'll talk about in the next section, but this game seemed to me like everything I would want growing up as a kid. Like I loved virtual tennis, and it had that. And it also had all the Sega franchises, which Sega's never done, and I think they should have done before this, like a crossover. And so I was really excited, and I remember I broke a story of one of the characters online that wasn't announced yet at the time. Ooh. And it really tells you how long ago 12 years was when it comes to reporting news, because I remember I got a Game Informer early, and they had a preview, and they revealed it was Alex Kidd, but nobody online posted about it. No sites, no nothing. So I was the one that updated, and IGN started, reported by this blog or whatever that it was coming out. That's really interesting.
That actually sparks a little memory of mine. I remember with All-Stars Racing, remember we'd get screenshots, and they would do kind of a bad job doing reveals. So really, every time a screenshot came out, people would zoom in, move around, what's that little pixel in the back? Is that Oolala? Oolala's in the game. They didn't announce her. So I was doing a lot of that stuff with the first All-Stars Racing, and I think it was in the Sonic Stadium forums. I'd be the one to be like, guys, I think I see a shadow, and I'm not talking about Shadow the Hedgehog. It's a shadow of Billy Hatcher. I can see him, off to the side.
Yeah.
So it's that's really funny. Now they've got it locked down. They do the character reveals, the rollouts, but back then it was just oh, there's Alex Kidd.
Wild West, dude.
Yeah, exactly. You're oh, yeah. I guess I revealed that.
Yeah, so that was when I first got my whole bug for trying to figure out oh man, when is this character going to be announced? Or so getting deeper into looking at information. Mm-hmm. So this is the game that did that for me. So I really appreciate that game in that sense. As for the playing, I really enjoyed the game. I think it was more because of the nostalgia and having all these characters than it was the game itself. Like you said, it is buggy, but I don't really blame Sumo Digital on this one because I feel like can you hear that right now?
What?
Like a clicking noise on my end?
No.
Okay, then I'll just edit this out and continue with my thing. So yeah, the game was buggy, but I really like that they kind of put Puyo Puyo in other franchises, and I thought this would have been an interesting way to try to relaunch some of these franchises. I don't know if Sega did a good job capitalizing on that, but it was an interesting experiment, and I obviously do think that doing a kart racing game was a lot easier for the team because we'll talk about all the trouble they went into trying to get 16 characters to be in this game, which doesn't sound like that much, but I'll continue right here with well, a lot of people in the West assumed the first entry to the Superstars franchise and the last since they changed the names to All-Stars. But 4 years before this game came out, Sega released Sega Superstars, a party video game featuring 12 minigames that used the PlayStation Eye toy, which is probably why nobody played this game. The game was highly influenced by Sony's iToy Play. Mm-hmm. While a lot of fans forget about this title because everyone forgot about the iToy, it was released worldwide and even got, according to Wikipedia, an average reviews. Though it got a 72 out of 100 Metacritic. I don't think that's average. I would consider that good. Mm-hmm. But hey, whatever. I mean, before playing Sega Superstars Tennis, Did you know about Sega Superstars by Sonic Team that existed prior?
I knew about it, and I think I've picked it up after playing tennis because it was just one of those like weird little oddities that passed me by. I had no reason to get an iToy. They were expensive at the time. But since then, I picked one up used. I went on eBay, got Sega Superstars, and I think it's a fine game. It's a good use of the iToy. It's fun little mini games. It's cool to see some of these franchises come together. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I did say that this kicked off the franchise, so I guess I was wrong, but this wasn't a sumo title. So I guess my mind was more in like sumo's whole, shepherding of the Superstars franchise, All-Stars franchise. But yeah, it was good. I use the iToy now for like Pico streams, Sega Pico streams. So yeah. Little.
I didn't get it because I didn't really want to buy an iToy, to be honest with you. I thought it was kind of dumb. I did see online like videos on how it plays, and I think it's a little silly because I remember these are basically what like old webcams used to come with, like those little mini games. And it just happens to have like a Virtual Fighter game where you punch nothing. I guess it's just like a little nice gimmick game. I feel like tennis was the right direction, and like you said, the other one was the first one by Sumo Digital, and I feel like they kind of basically had the better idea. Instead of making all these little gimmicky video games, just centered around something Sega has already done in the past, like a racing or tennis. I thought that was a lot better idea. So Sega Superstars Tennis was the first full from the ground up game developed by Sumo Digital for Sega. In the past, Sumo Digital was the company that would port like Sega arcade games, and I think that's where I really started to appreciate them when they started doing games like Outrun 2, Outrun 2 SP, Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, and the lastly was Virtual Tennis 3. Seen as the port of Virtual Tennis 3 was right before Sega Superstars Tennis, it's safe to say that the engine they created to port Virtual Tennis 3 turned into Sega Superstars Tennis. While some people will say, no, shut up, George, they aren't the same game. One of our favorite mid-2000s website called UK Resistance had a Steve Lassette, who is the director of this game. They had an interview with him, and I don't know if this is a joke interview, but it sounds like a joke interview, but they have like a bunch of interviews with Sumo Digital, and they're kind of all like in a like I don't know, a joke basically, like it's a comic sketch. So this is the UKR question. They're like, so is this just Virtual Tennis 3 with some new textures on it? Steve, everybody's asked us that. It's a game in its own right. That's an awful question. I refuse to answer it. UKR, but Virtual Tennis 3 is great. It's a compliment, Steve. It's Virtual Tennis 3, but for everybody, we've tried to make fun of it. We've added loads of characters that play differently, unlike Virtual Tennis. And then Travis stepping in to avoid trouble. Virtual Tennis 3 is a fun arcade game, but a lot of people are put off by the way it looks like a sim. It's easy to pick up, but it looks like a simulation. So we tried to make a game that's bright and colorful with loads of Sega characters to attract new people. In your opinion on using Virtual Tennis 3 to make a crossover Sega tennis game, like, what's your opinion on that? And this is sort of what Sega's been trying to do with like the Mario and Sonic series, really. Like, they use the same engine to make the other Olympic titles. Yeah. You think this is what do you think used it better, though? Mario and Sonic, or do you think this is probably a better idea?
I mean, with Mario and Sonic, I feel like none of the mini games are as deep as a full-on tennis game is. You also have the Olympic setting, which is kind of unexciting. Whereas with Superstars Tennis, it's, not only the characters, but the locations. Nothing's in just like a boring old tennis court. So you're in Green Hill, you're in Tokyoto. So I think it has that going for it just in terms of design. And, I think it's smart to use something that works. Obviously, you look at, like, what has Nintendo done with Mario? Like Mario Strikers.
Mario Tennis.
Mario Tennis, Smash Brothers. But the thing is none of those franchises Nintendo can really call their own. Like, there isn't, like... I can't think of an ongoing tennis franchise from Nintendo outside of them making a Mario Tennis game. And, I mean, maybe I'm sounding like the Sega fanboy, but for me, like, even if Mario has done it first, I feel like Sega has more of a say in tennis or racing because they have really cultivated long-term great franchises in those settings. So it's like to say, why is Sonic doing a racing game? Mario can do it better. It's like, you're talking about Sega, though, like, and even Sumo Digital, who has done tennis, and they've done Outrun 2, you know, like the granddaddy of all racing games sequels. So, I don't know. You know, it's like, it's smart. Honestly, I feel like they could have done a Virtua, like, fighter game outside of Sonic the Fighters. Like, continue that going, you know?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised they haven't tried to do more of this. Like, I know the arcades are getting, like, less popular in Japan, but, like, just get any game that you have, like a racing game. I know Sega's still making racing games, but, like, now like, there isn't another game that they port that is kind of, like, tied in like this anymore, which I don't know. I mean, I love the Transform series and all that, but like going Sonic only now is kind of weird. I hope they go back to this and they do they try something different. It would be interesting to see what else they could do, or maybe just use Sega games, like, you know how they're already making House of the Dead in the Unreal Engine. That could be like a mini game you throw in there, right? Like using that engine, just taking away the graphics or whatever.
That could be cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas, but well, the game was a tennis game and a super fun tennis game. We all know the biggest selling feature was that this game basically had a bunch of Sega IPs, some that haven't been used for years before this. So these are the playable characters from the start. You get Sonic the Hedgehog, Miles, Tails, you know, we all know, Dr. Eggman, Beat from Jet Set Radio, Ooh La La, Space Channel 5, Amigo for Samba de Amigo, Knights from Nights into Dream, Ai from Super Monkey Ball, Amy Rose, Shadow the Hedgehog. These are unlockable ones, obviously. Mr. Thunderhead from Golden Axe, Gum Pudding, Riala, how do you say her name?
Riala?
Really? Mimi, and that's it, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And when this game came out, which one of the returning characters surprised you the most, and which one would you exchange for another character? I know we have a lot of doubles here, right? I think that was the point. I mean, they did it on purpose because it's a doubles game, right? You have to play a partner.
For sure. And I mean, first off, the character that surprised me the most, I think, was Alex Kidd, because sure, we're used to seeing him cameo a lot now, but at the time that was a huge deal, I remember, for Sega fans to be like, Alex Kidd is playable for the first time in years, you know, maybe even over a decade. So that was a pretty big deal. And Alex Kidd, you know, he's kind of a genre hopper, so to play him in a tennis game doesn't really feel like a spin-off. It just feels like something goofy they would eventually get around to doing with Alex Kidd, you know? Like, he was in a BMX racing game, he was in platformers, he was in kind of like quasi-role-playing games, so I think he was the biggest surprise. As far as who I would take out and replace, I honestly think this is a pretty great lineup. I'm looking at these, and even if I see one that I don't like, the fact that tennis is played, you know, with doubles, sometimes it makes sense to have two. Yeah. So, like, none of these really, honestly, none of these, like, seem bad to me. I think, if anything, I would have found a way to get Gilius Thunderhead to have another Golden Axe character, because it does seem kind of weird to have Alex and Gilius basically as a team, because, like, who else do they go with? And then you have the Sonic characters with an uneven 5. So, if anything, I would have added more characters and kept the cast they have. Because it's really hard to say, like remove Shadow. If anything,
Yeah.
Knuckles is missing. You need Knuckles. Where's Knuckles?
He's the most popular Sega character, right?
It's weird. It's weird that Knuckles isn't there.
Yeah, little things like that are weird, and like I agree with you. Some people don't have partners, even though that was supposed to be the point of the game. You could probably tell, since this is Sumo Digital's first game, that they probably had to cut corners in this game, especially when you have to do it on like 6 platforms, which is insane.
Yeah.
I thought one of the biggest hyped characters was Ryu from Shimyu. That didn't happen. So it would have been cool to see that. But it never happened. And there's actually a question in the next part where they actually talk about this. So at the time, people were complaining there wasn't enough Sega representation because they had so many Sonic characters. And this is actually a thing that goes on with every game. Everybody always like, why so many Sonic characters? Like, well, Sonic's a little popular, I think. And to be honest, it's probably impossible to satisfy every Sega fan. In a 2008 interview with Kikizo, director Steve Lassette talked about what it took to bring these characters to life. For context, the question asked about Ryu, which was it was like a rumored character that Sumo Digital teased was going to be in the game. And he said, basically, when we made the game, we made a list of characters we wanted, but we also had to make sure that we could do the game in time. Each character has something like 150 to 200 animations. And because the game is very animation driven, if these animations take too long on screen, it will actually break the way the game plays. So we basically had to do 3 things with animation. 1, make them look like the original characters. 2, make sure the game is still able to be playable. Then 3, get it past the original creators. When you look at the process like that, you have to limit the amount of characters you've actually got. We thought 16 separate characters with their own set of animations is probably enough this time around. In the future, we got more characters or assets that we could look at if we want to do another game like this. But we just have to pick a list of characters that people know. And as much as people love Shinmu, he's one of those characters that fell by the wayside as a result. I mean, the other thing, and I'll say this specifically, is we tried to get characters which fit together on screen. Although Lulala is humanoid, she's still very cartoony. Ryu has a look which is very human, and it might have a look. He might look out of place. So it's kind of an artistic decision as well, which is kind of funny because I felt like Alex Kidd this is like his worst look ever. So like,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, you guys redesigned this character and he's ugly. Like, I understand you guys passed it on the original creators. I felt like Ulala was probably the best represented character, and so was the Knights characters, but I felt like Alex Kidd was the worst one myself.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this information and how you look at the characters and how they represented them?
I'm kind of having flashbacks to our recent discussions about the Sonic movie, where it's like, again, we have these creatives who are like, how can you have cartoony characters existing with human? It just doesn't work artistically. And I'm like, I mean, have you seen Roger Rabbit? Have you played Super Smash Brothers? Like, it works. I mean, you look at those screenshots that people are drooling over when a new Smash Brothers reveal comes out, and it's like the Duck Hunt dog and then Bayonetta, and it's like they could be, so far apart design-wise, and Bayonetta, as crazy as she looks way more realistic than that cartoony dog, but it still works because it's like they represent their corner of the video game world, and people just like seeing them brought together. People don't care if they all have the same style. And, well, something like that works in a game like Sega Heroes, where they all need to be the same proportions and, to save money on the movesets and things like that. In this game, like, as long as they can hold a tennis racket and run around, like, it shouldn't matter. You could put Opa Opa in this game, and it would work just fine. Like, I don't really buy that. I don't know. Maybe it's just, like, a type of mindset in the creative world that exists, But I can get past it. I guess some people can't. Oh well.
Yeah, and I also agree with you. Like, I do agree with the animations. That's hard.
Yeah.
But this is why I think they moved to kart racing, because you have to only animate the hands and up the above the waist. So it probably saved a lot of time for the team. While it's easy, this is my question. I just went off the cuff. Sorry. While it's easy for fans and critics critique the selection of characters, he does bring up a time frame, animation, and getting characters approved by original developers, and of course Ryu appearing in future games. I guess they tease. Would you mind if they brought in clone characters with the same animations, like Shadow and Sonic basically being the same game? I mean, or the same character or whatever.
It's tricky because, I mean, well, I do think Sonic and Shadow are very similar. They do have their differences that fans pick up, and that I think Iizuka would just say no to if they made a carbon copy, because, Shadow, he does his little hover skating move. That alone is different enough that you'd have to do a different moveset. And then the attitude, too, like, you can't show Shadow doing all these like happy, quirky Sonic moves. It would just not suit his character. So I think you could get away with it, but then I think you'd be doing a disservice to the creators and most especially the fans.
Yeah, I think this would probably work better as like having skins you unlock or something, like, classic Sonic just above, like he moves exactly like modern Sonic or whatever, just for fans to be happy. Maybe you could get away with Silver or something, but yeah, I agree. A lot of these characters, like Sonic and Knuckles, express themselves through their actions, so that's hard, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, who would Ryu be? Like, Virtual Fighter guy? I guess you could say you could put the Virtual Fighter guy and then put Ryu and just copy each other's moves. Yeah, that could work.
That actually could work.
There's some that could work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard, but I think this is the reason they actually moved on to kart racing after this, because of easier animation. And it's funny because I remember when people were asking for knights and all that in the other one, in the kart racing game, they brought up the animation thing too. Like, we had to animate every character and it takes too long, so we can't have that,
Yeah.
So I guess that's the go-to. I mean, maybe it's the truth. I don't know. I don't make games, so... The game was a party tennis game that featured super states, where you could fill a meter and get a special move. This is similar to Mario Tennis. Superstars, I guess a lot of these Superstars games are basically always compared to Mario games, right? Mm-hmm. Superstars 10 is used unique animations for each Superstar state, and was basically a callback to their previous games with Sonic turning Supersonic. Amigo had a Maraca Madness where the ball would fly in an erratic pattern. Alex Kidd had a rock, paper, scissors one. Of course, some of these Superstar states would do the same thing. I mean, you can only do so much with a tennis ball. What is your opinion on these party games using super meters and super moves like Mario Kart or even Superstars Tennis? Like, a lot of people have like they feel it's cheap, right? But it's really there because they're trying to make it mainstream, so even your friend that sucks at it has a chance to come back, right?
Yeah, no, I have no problem at all with it. I think if you want to play a real tennis game, go play Virtua Tennis. But if you just want to play a fun party game that has these little like tweaks to the rules, obviously they're going to, you're going to want to try one of these games. And I don't see an issue because it's a really good way to, one, reward players so that they can see their favorite character kind of dominate briefly. And also it's a great way to bring in fan servicey things. Like, you're not going to see Supersonic unless you have this temporary super mode. You're not going to have rock, paper, scissors in the game unless you have this as well. And they went even further, I remember, with All-Stars Racing. Like, the Bonanza Brothers had a crazy one where you looked over the track from a blimp and started, like, dropping bombs on people. It was crazy. So I think they were on the right track with this. I actually really liked how diverse they were in this game and how diverse they were in All-Stars Racing. I think it was a shame that Transformed kind of it just kind of, they just went faster,
Yeah, yeah.
and flew. That was it for all of them. I kind of missed the more unique ones where you're like, yeah, you're flying around dropping bombs, you're playing rock paper scissors. So I really like this idea, and I like, not to take away from Mario, but this is something I think anyone with half a brain would have implemented, even if Mario Tennis or Mario Kart didn't exist. They were like, we have these characters, it's a game that's not strictly tied to the rules of tennis. What can we do? Let's have them do a superpower and show off something that they, the kids like. So, it's fun.
I don't think that like Mario created it. I just use it as a example because I feel like
for sure.
A lot of people that play these type of games, all of us have played Mario Kart, right? So it's the most popular one. It sells a gajillion copies. So the next bit is we're going to talk about the courts. There was only 10 courts featured in this game, and I feel like this is the biggest letdown because I feel like making courts for other games would have probably been the easiest thing, right?
Right.
So we got Green Hill Zone, which, I mean, we always have to have Green Hill Zone for Sonic. Scrap Brain Zone, which is another Sonic one. Spaceport 9, Space Channel 5. Coconut Beach Outrun, which is surprising. Carrier Zone for Afterburner, another surprising one. Curian Mansion for the House of the Dead. Super Monkey Ball for Super Monkey Ball. Shibuya. Downtown. Jet Set Radio. And Carnival Park for our boy Samba de Amigo. And see, that's it. Like, no Golden Axe? What's going on here?
Yeah.
It would have been sick to have like a Golden Axe the first stage or on the back of a turtle or something. But no.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on how each court is represented, including for games like Jet Set Radio that featured a brand new 3D style? That was the weirdest part for me in this game, was like looking at V in 3D, right? For the first time.
Yeah, honestly, when Steve was talking about that realistic, cartoony blend not working, I think the only time it doesn't work is when you have a game where the graphical style like does not translate. Like Jet Set Radio, yeah, like you take away the cell shading and they do look a little strange. So yeah, that is odd. Like if anything, it makes the whole world of Jet Set Radio seem kind of normal, which is kind of a disservice to it. You also look at some of these and, I mean, yeah, Outrun and Afterburner have had 3D versions, but these are supposed to be referencing pixel art. Same with Green Hill Zone and especially Scrap Brain Zone. That one surprises me because, Sonic fans like to cry about Green Hill Zone coming back, but they should really be celebrating Scrap Brain being in this because that's a really underrepresented zone. I think this is the only time it's been revived, really.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a classic zone. That's like the first final stage. So I think overall they were represented well. I do like the idea, and they did this in Transformed, where they have these tracks that aren't necessarily represented by either
characters.
Tennis players or racers. Yeah, exactly. So I really like that. I think they could have done more. I think even basic ones like a Space Harrier track with just the Space Harrier grass and the mountains in the background, like it's super easy to do. So why not?
Yeah.
But I don't know if we talk about it later, but Space Harrier is like in the game, right? Like as a bonus. So there's something like that. But what do you think about the courts?
Well, I think some of these were like given, like Coconut Beach. I'm pretty sure they took the assets directly from the Xbox port, so it's like, oh yeah, we can add this. I wish they would do more of that. Like I'm sure Sega has a bunch of assets, right? 3D assets. So it would have been cool to get like maybe even the 3D Shinobi or a Billy Hatcher because it was so easy, But I still think it's great. I mean, I don't think any other team likes Outrun and AM2 stuff as much as Sumo, so you could tell that they had to sneak them in there as courts. So I'm pretty happy with that. So here's I guess a little unknown fact about this game. I never really hear people talk about this. The game was actually censored because of Germany. Apparently, Curian Mansion was what was listed instead of the House of the Dead, and Virtual Squad instead of Virtual Cop. And the reason, I guess we also had Puyo Pop, but that's just Sega of America at the time.
Right.
According to the interview, they asked him why they kept the censored names outside of Germany, because this is apparently the House of the Dead and Virtual Cop. The names are both banned in Germany. I think Virtual Cop is because of copyright. I'm not sure though. But let me just here's what Steve Lissette says about it. I think he talks more about it here. It's crazy. Basically, the situation is House of the Dead and Virtual Cop are banned in Germany, and once a game is banned, it's banned forever. From our point of view, we've done the game on 5 platforms. We'd have to do a separate German SQ. It would have been quite a bit of work, and we'd have to get things past things, change the logos, artwork, etc. And so between us and Sega, we decided to compensate all across Europe, and so it turned out to be Curian Mansion and Virtual Squad. But I think it's called Virtual Squad in some territories anyway. Did you know that Germany did not like light gun games? And because they're both light gun games that they decided to ban.
That's interesting.
Did you know that we have to deal with this issue in the rest of these free countries?
That's free, not like Shenmue's full reactive eyes entertainment.
No,
like
that's
freedom.
No, free as in the Shenmue one. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Which is
good,
also part of it's also part of American freedoms.
I didn't know that. Wow. Wow, you're really digging up some crazy trivia from the past. Yeah, I completely forgot. I remember Curian Mansion because that was a thing in the racing games, but Virtua Squad, like, wow, I forgot all about that. That's really funny. It's a shame. Like, they're just light guns. They're not real guns. The whole point of video games is it's a fantasy. So calm down. I don't know.
It is kind of crazy that like the German government seems to not like light gun games. I wonder if this happened with Time Crisis. Or
I wonder what they called it. Like Time.
Not Crisis.
Nothing. Time Not Crisis. Yeah. Everything's Fine. The game was called. That's crazy. Yeah, no, it's a shame though. So the American version though, did that have House of the Dead and Virtua Cop? I can't remember.
I don't have a 360, so I couldn't hook it up to figure out. And I looked everywhere, and nobody really said yes or no. So I'm assuming they stayed because I want to think that I want to think that I never saw the logo of House of the Dead in the game, and I just assumed it was because the court was actually Curian's Mansion that they called it that. And the Virtual Squad one, I'm not sure either. I know it's a mini game, so I wish I had a 360 easily to hook up, but I don't have one because I have the game. I have the game on 360. That's the one I played the most. But let's see. We're talking about the mini games next. The game featured modes called Superstar Mode, which would let players go on missions, including exhibition match, tournament, and tasks, which are basically the mini games. The more missions you unlock, the more content you got. I wish the game had more content, but it is what it is. The game also had a separate exhibition mode and tournament mode if you wanted to play. One of the things I always love about Sumo Digital games is that even in their ports, we got these like really creative mini games to like dig into when you were done with the main game. And Superstar Tennis is no different. We had Puyo Pop Fever, which basically let you hit a tennis ball and solve a puzzle of Puyo Puyos. Basically, you have to just clear the board. Space Harrier, you hit one. You have to hit all these like basically Space Harrier themed bosses, like or bad guys. Virtual Squad, you take down cardboard thieves with your racket instead of a gun. They also shoot if you don't hit them fast enough, so it's basically like the original game. Jet Set Radio, where they threw spray cans at you, and you had to basically hit them in certain spots of the graffiti. Sonic the Hedgehog, which is rings appear on the court, and you're allowed. And there's a robot on the other side of the court throwing projectiles while you try to collect as many rings. If you get hit, you obviously drop the rings. It's kind of, I thought that was pretty fun, even though it was very simple. Super Monkey Ball. In this mini game, you have to hit the monkey balls into your ring on the other side of the court. You have to hit it through it, kind of like what you do if you played Super Monkey Ball. Choo Choo Rocket, you basically had to get the mice into the rockets while hitting the ball and changing the directions in the other side. And Korean Mansion is basically you kill zombies with the tennis ball and you save civilians. So what other games do you think would make good mini games for this? And what was your thoughts on the mini games that they did have?
Boy, what was missing? I think it would have been cool to have Virtua Fighter, where they have the fighters on the other side and you do ring outs by hitting them with the balls. Like, they could be slowly walking towards you, and then if you hit them multiple times, they get knocked back to the point of doing a ring out. So it's almost kind of like Space Invaders, where they're coming towards you.
Yeah.
I think it would have been fun to have a Virtua Tennis. I mean, why not have actual Virtua Tennis there?
Yeah.
Like you find yourself on the Virtua Tennis court, Sega Sports logo in the background. And, maybe something goofy like Flicky or something. The little bird with the little trail of little chirpy birds behind him, and you hit the birds off of them, but then that makes you, I guess, the bad guy, so maybe not. But
Maybe not.
But it's hard to pick a favorite, but I really like how diverse it is. It's like you're getting 16-bit, you're getting 8-bit, you're getting arcade, you're getting Dreamcast era. I think Saturn is really underrepresented in this game as a whole, though.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too, right?
Like, I'm not seeing any Sega Saturn
Squad?
references.
Virtual Squad, I guess, technically.
I guess. But that's more like...
Arcade.
I mean, that was like ported. That's the closest thing you get. But, yeah, I think it's definitely missing some Saturn representation. That would have been cool. How about you?
I think Puyo Pop Fever is pretty sick, and I think every time that Puyo gets added to any game as a mini game, it's just automatically awesome. Like Sonic Mania boss with Puyo, awesome. I like that. I really did like Space Harrier. That one's the one that surprised me, because like I try to go in a lot of the stuff blind. I knew the characters, but I didn't know the mini games. So when I played it, I was like, wait. They got Space Harrier. Like, these guys are serious. It's not just Sonic stuff. I guess like stuff like Jet Set Radio is obvious, but as for making other mini games, I would love to see them do more obscure arcade games. Like I thought it would be cool to like advertise stuff like Ollie King or whatever, like just stuff that like nobody really talks about. But I mean, we got what we got. And like you said, there wasn't that much Sega Saturn representation, but like I'm trying to think, what Sega Saturn only game did Sega even make? Like at the time, it just felt like it was all arcade stuff, right?
Nights. They could have done Nights.
They could have done Nights, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe even a Burning Rangers one, just to make it a little different.
That would have been cool.
One of the surprising parts of the game wasn't just that it was Sumo Digital's first game, but that they had to complete it on multiple platforms, which was really impressive. So the game had differences between each version had its own different thing, right? For example, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 both had online play and HD graphics, while the Wii version featured 3 different control options, including motion control, Wii Remote sideways, and Wii Remote with a nunchuck. And the 3DS or the DS version. Sorry, this is before 3DS. It had D-pad and motion controls. The HD versions also had more missions compared to the Wii version and a different HUD. What versions of the game would you recommend to our readers? And what is your opinion on having the Wii and DS versions? Are you surprised that we got a Mac version in 2013 but not a PC version?
Wow, you're throwing a lot of questions at me, George.
Yeah, let's start with the first one.
I would say that I'd probably recommend the Xbox 360 version. I would also say that the Wii and DS versions are interesting to check out. I mean, honestly, if you can get them for a good price, pick them both up, because it's the only portable version of the game on the DS, and the Wii has... you can try the motion controls out, see how you like them. And I am surprised about the Mac version. I think I remember playing that, at least a demo of it, and it was weird playing a Sega game on a Mac.
Yeah, it's also weird that it came out like 5 years after the first game came out, and PC version never came out. Like,
yeah,
I like Mac, right? It's cool, but like PC seems to be having a lot of gamers, right?
Oh, for sure.
I would also recommend the 360 version because, like you said, it has the better graphics. It has the smoothest one. I guess online doesn't matter anymore, but it has the most missions. So I do remember that when this game came out, it was really hyped on the Wii because of the motion controls. A lot of people were very obsessed with the idea of playing tennis with a motion control because of Wii Play Tennis or whatever it's called. So when I was going back and reading interviews, a lot of talk about the Wii version was probably talked about 80% of the time. But I mean, you could try it out if you want. I also like the DS version. I said on Twitter before, but because it looks like a Sega Saturn game. It looks like if this game came out on Sega Saturn, it's the DS version. It would look like that.
Yeah.
And another impressive thing about the DS version is that it runs at 60 frames per second. So Sumo Digital does know what they're doing. So now we get to the part where we're going to have to get mad at some people. It's critics what they thought about this game back then. While our opinions are usually high because we're Sega fanboys and we like the idea that we have all these franchises in one game, it makes us happy. What did mainstream reviewers think at the time? According to IGN, who gave the game a 6.4, in theory, there's nothing wrong with the idea of a whimsical tennis game featuring classic Sega characters. In practice, it's a bit of a yawn that ends up feeling like a barely good enough cash-in. The environments and characters are largely well done, but the control scheme and dull minigames drag Sega Superstars Tennis down. Game Revolution gave the game a 0.5 out of 10. Wait a minute, why am I playing a tennis game anyway? And that's exactly what will be going through your head. If the actual tennis wasn't tedious and mundane, you wouldn't have to ask whether Sega Superstar Tennis was just used to justify a reunion of Sega characters, or the other way around. Either way, the dream of a Sega-filled game that actually lives up to the legacy of Sega remains to be fulfilled.
Oh, shut up.
It's funny though because if you read the Game Revolution review, it's very terrible. Like, one of their issues with the game is there's no tutorials, so they don't tell you how the lob and all that stuff works, which I guess you could complain, but like, dude, I don't know. Like, do we really have to have a tutorial for everything in tennis? Like, maybe they should have done it, but to give the game a 0.5 out of 10 because of that, it's like, okay, dude. So, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I gotta, like, mention here, like, this, I think, is the games industry coming off of kind of a shitty era of gaming magazines where it was just a bunch of, like, excuse me, like, dude bro speak, and they'd be like, all right, guys, so you got a hot babe at your side, and you're picking the toe jam between your toes. You know, like, they have, like, stupid shit like that in the reviews. So,
yeah. My issue is, like, why, like,
me.
you have to, I mean, yeah, like, you have the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, right, I do.
As a reviewer, you have to tell me why it's mundane. You can't just say words like, it's mundane. Why is the gameplay mundane, right? How do you make tennis mundane? Like, it's not that hard of a game.
It's mundane, that's why.
Destructoid, on the other hand, gave the game a 7, saying, it's a damn solid game with bright and beautiful graphics, simple but fun gameplay, and a significant wad of content. I will say that most reviewers gave the game about a 7, and it averaged about that. So I would say that's good. Some people would say that's average, like Wikipedia, but I disagree. Yeah, that's basically all my notes I have on this game. Anything you want to say to close it?
Well, before we read off our Patreon memory, I do want to mention the music. We didn't touch on the music.
No, I didn't touch on it. I'll tell you why, though.
Okay.
I try to look for all the tracks, like the remix tracks, but everybody's playlist of this game is like, they just show you, like, let's say Scrap Brain Zone. It's just the old song from the old, like, another remix. So was this game just using old tracks? But I was pretty sure there was remix music here, right?
I mean, by and large, I think it used pre-existing music, but what I was going to mention was the theme song, I believe was from, what is it, Richard Jacques?
Yeah.
And I remember in interviews when he talked about the music, he said that the theme song is basically Sega Superstars Tennis, so you can sing it even though there's no lyrics. So it goes, Sega Superstars Tennis. Da, 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 da. So, every time I play the game, I always kind of in my head sing along with it. And I think it's kind of cool that they worked in the Sega into the song itself. I think that's cool. I like that. But yeah, it's. I mean, as you can see from this episode, it's not a deep game, but it's a fun party game, which I think, it is exactly what it sets out to be. So I think it's a successful game at that. I would love to see Sumo come back and revive it, knowing what they know now, but I feel like it's just, we've moved on, it's racing now. I just feel like the current people at Sega would never give the go-ahead for another tennis game in 2020.
And if they do, I feel like it would be like a Sonic tennis game, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. And before we wrap things up too, you can check us out on Patreon. You can support us. You can get this show a little bit early. And you get to have your memories shared at the end. In the case of this show, we have Nicholas Schaefer. He's our lone wolf here. But he has a lot to say about this game, so I will let Nicholas take it away. He says, I love and adore this game, and it's a crime that it has not had a sequel. It just had so much charm. I never have been one for sports games, but love this one even more than Mario Strikers. All the secret characters in Singacords made me want to keep playing to unlock more. So much unique character animation that rivals Sega All-Stars Racing for me. Despite me being a Dreamcast owner, I didn't buy a Dreamcast till 2001, and many of the games were already disappearing from stores. It was this game that got me to investigate the series, to play Jet Set Radio and Space Channel 5, and it baffles me that Sega doesn't keep making these games to keep their franchises alive. And I guess just to comment on Nicholas real quick, I kind of agree there. I like when Sega uses these cameos to promote pre-existing games, and I think now, out of all the times, is a really good time to do that, because with Sega Ages, Shenmue 3, Space Channel 5 VR, Streets of Rage 4, like, there's actual modern-day remakes and sequels out there that they're making money off of. I think at the time with Superstars Tennis, there was no Alex Kidd, there was no Golden Axe, so it wouldn't really make sense for them to do it, but they did it anyway. But now there's actually a reason. So, yeah, I say bring back this all-encompassing Sega franchise game, whether it be racing, tennis, fighting, cooking, whatever, because now's the time. Now is the time. Anything else?
Yeah,
you agree?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because like it's just weird to me that we got Sonic, the racing game, but not a new tennis game, or not a new tennis game, but not an all-star racing game like with all the Sega characters. And I felt like it was the perfect time when they were doing the road to 2020. That's all.
Yeah, and we're here now. The road has ended.
All right, I guess we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.